Hidden on a small island in the North Sea are the last remains of one of the most unusual relics of the Second World War. At one time, dozens upon dozens of these huge floating buoys could be found scattered around the waters of the United Kingdom, intended as a floating refuge for stranded airmen or sailors who found themselves lost at sea. Having clambered aboard and down under the water, those inside would find a floating accommodation, packed with everything one would need to survive until rescue. Bunk beds and fresh clothes, a stove as well as food and drink, first aid kits and even board games, chocolate and cognac to help keep those on board amused until help arrived. I've always been slightly obsessed with these rescue buoys. In fact, I made an entire documentary all about them. But because none of the German rescue buoys ever survived the war, I never thought I'd get the chance to see one up close. That is, until now. Getting all the way from the tiny small remote island that I live on up here in the very northwest of Scotland all the way down to the small remote island where this rescue buoy is located off the coast of the Netherlands required a lot of planning and a lot of travel. Now, of course, like all my videos, it requires a lot of sitting down and reading and researching and hours in front of the computer. And of course, the best tool for doing all that work on the computer has been my loyal companion over the last decade or more and today's sponsor, and that is Opera. I have used Opera for literally decades at this point, and it is still the fastest, safest, and smartest way of browsing the internet. The thing that I've always loved about Opera is just how packed full it is of useful and innovative features. It comes with a built-in ad blocker and free VPN, an essential for me when I'm scrolling through hundreds of obscure websites and documents for research. It has the best screenshot feature of any browser. This is a really niche thing, but I literally use this feature every single day, dozens of times when I'm making a video, and it's the absolute best. There's also Aria, Opera's built-in AI, which has sped up my ability to quickly explore topics and, most importantly, translate text. And then, finally, there's Tab Islands. Tab Islands have saved my life. This clever feature allows you to group together tabs and then quickly stash them away and expand them again when needed. When I'm juggling multiple video scripts, research topics, or keeping track of jerry cans that I want to buy on eBay, the Tab Islands allow me to keep them saved, safe and accessible without having to stick them in some bookmarks folder that I'm bound to forget about. And of course, best of all this is free. So click the link in the description or comments below to download and try Opera for free and improve your browsing experience. Thanks again, Opera, for the support, and let's get back to the rescue buoy.
Southeast coast is still a daily witness of the German attempts to crush the Royal Air Force, but the fight for the mastery of the skies is still very much on.
The concept of the Rettungsboje, or rescue buoy, was developed during the Battle of Britain, a massive aerial campaign that pitted the German Luftwaffe against the Royal Air Force and Fleet Air Arm in the skies above Britain. As a result of the countless fierce engagements taking place each day, hundreds of airmen on both sides were being downed or forced to bail out of their aircraft, with many landing in the cold waters of the North Sea or English Channel, where chances of rescue or survival were slim to none. It was out of these mounting losses that the first primitive rescue buoys were born, eventually being developed by the Germans into the distinctive yellow Lobster Pot. Each of these buoys was of a hexagonal construction, with an internal floor space of around 43 square feet and around 8 foot of standing room. Beneath the floor was a large and heavy pouring of concrete that acted as a ballast to weigh down the buoy in rougher seas. The small cabin had enough accommodation to comfortably house 4 persons and was generously furnished with bunks, fresh linen and spare clothes, as well as storage shelves carrying everything from rations and medical supplies to chocolates, alcohol, cigarettes and board games to help lift the spirits of those stuck on board. All this could be accessed via a ladder in the centre of the room that led back up and above the waves into the small conning tower. Above it all was a tall mast with a black ball and striped flag that could be hoisted during the day along with red and white lights at night to alert rescuers that people were aboard in need of assistance. Now, throughout the Battle of Britain and in the months afterwards, dozens, in fact we know over 100 of these German rescue buoys were constructed, were used all throughout the English Channel and into the North Sea. But as the months wore on, buoys broke free, they were swamped in storms, they were damaged in a variety of ways. Some were damaged by gunfire, perhaps accidentally or deliberately sunk, and many found themselves washed ashore and stranded along the coastline. So by the end of the war, there were few left, and the ones that did survive were quickly scrapped and forgotten about. In fact, the only surviving rescue buoy really that made it all the way up to modern times was the ASR-10. That's a British rescue buoy that ended up at the Scottish Maritime Museum, and that's one I actually visited in my last video. However, there is another. It seems like at some point following 1940, a German rescue buoy ended up washing ashore on the west coast of a small Dutch island called Terschelling, located just north of Amsterdam. Now, we don't know which buoy actually ended up on the beach there at Terschelling buried in the sand. It could be 14 or 25, the two that we know were in the area around the time based on the surviving records. But for whatever reason, it was never recovered. It was allowed to sit there and slowly sink into the sand over the years and decades. There also isn't many photos of the buoy way back when it was first stranded, except for these. These incredible photos show the rescue buoy stuck in the sand on Terschelling in around 1953. It was actually the son of one of the men in these photos who uncovered these when he was going through his father's possessions after he sadly passed away in 2021. Now, I'll leave a link in the description to the article that Gert wrote about this. It's an amazing story, essentially, of uncovering these photos and instantly recognising the distinctive shape of one of the rescue buoys. But these photos give us quite a lot of clues as to what the rescue buoy looked like and the state that it was in just over about a decade from when it was first originally stranded in the sand. Now, there's two main photos here. This one is quite nice because it shows you the angle that the buoy was in the sand. You can see the broken mast. You can also see here, I think these are the lights, or the housings for the lights, because there was essentially navigation lights on there that could be lit when there was people in need of rescue on board, essentially. Now, another detail you can make out here in both photos actually are the windows. They're very distinctive because they had this sort of mesh grille over both of them. But the thing that interests me is the fact that you can clearly see both doors are missing. So not long after the buoy was stranded, it seems like somebody, some enterprising individual, maybe an islander on Terschelling, had removed the doors and perhaps repurposed them somewhere else. I do wonder, maybe somewhere on that island, unbeknownst to someone, there is an old shed door or a door to a pigsty or something like that that actually has the original doors to this rescue buoy. Who knows? They might still be out there somewhere. Now, this photo is also quite interesting because they took this near where the buoy was. This is basically the closest marker to the buoy. There are markers all the way up the beach that run from the very east to the very west of the island, essentially. And 21 is very far west, basically away from all of the main communities and pretty inaccessible, especially back then. And it helps illustrate just why this thing was probably never recovered. It's way out of the way in the middle of nowhere. And what's more, the rescue buoy is heavy, but it's not just steel. Remember, there is that massive concrete ballast sitting at the bottom of the buoy. So even if you did manage to excavate it and get it out of the sand, if you can't float it away, you're definitely not going to be dragging it away either. Now, over the years, the conning tower eventually disappeared. The mast and everything had already gone, even by the 1950s, as we can see here. And eventually, even the very top of the main section of the buoy started to rot and corrode as you had the tides, the storm surges, everything moving it and burying it up constantly in the sand. And it essentially was at risk of disappearing forever underneath the beach of Terschelling. That is, however, until the islanders of Terschelling brought it back. In the west of Terschelling, hidden in the forests near the island's main settlement, lies the Bunkermuseum, set inside the huge concrete structures that once controlled Terschelling's contribution to Germany's Atlantic Wall. Terschelling's radar stations were some of the most important in the area, and having sat abandoned for decades, in 2012, volunteers began restoring and preserving the relics of the island's huge former defensive network. The large museum now tells the story of the island's wartime past, but it wouldn't be complete without the addition of the unique rescue buoy. By now, the buoy was all but lost under the sand, frequently swamped by the tide and stranded kilometres to the island's remote and uninhabited east. None of this stopped the islanders, however. Using a combination of shovels, water pumps and excavators, the team slowly clawed down almost 3 metres into the sand, exposing for the first time in decades the main body of the buoy once hidden below the sand. The now brittle and corroded metal frame proved hard to anchor onto, but perhaps most difficult of all, the massive concrete ballast, originally intended to help stabilise it at sea, now stubbornly held in place. It would take the combined resources of almost every heavy excavator, tractor and crane available on Terschelling to finally dislodge the buoy, and amazingly, these last remains of an original World War II Rettungsboje, probably the only one left in existence, was finally free from the sand, some 70 years after it had first become entombed there. Now it would be a case of transporting these delicate, fragile remains all the way from where it was recovered to the Bunker Museum, where the transformation from ruined wreck to rescue buoy would occur. Over the years, the buoy has gone through a remarkable transformation, turning it from what was an unrecognisable twisted wreck into an incredibly accurate recreation of what an original rescue buoy would have looked like.
It really is incredible just how much of this they've been able to recreate. If you look a bit closer, you can see the seams where the new metal has been melded to the old remains of the rescue buoy. Now, on this side of it here, there is really no port and starboard, I suppose, but you can see the remains of the old metal. It's very bumpy. You can actually see what looks to be either holes from corrosion or bullet holes, I don't really know. But then as we move around, you can start to see the seams where they've basically added on the new structure onto the top. Remember, this was buried in the sand, and for many years the original conning tower stuck out the top. But by the time this was recovered, none of that had really survived. And as you can see on the top, all of that, the new buoy, the new conning tower, is completely new. Now, as we walk around the side here, you can see all the incredible attention to detail. The railings and ladders that could have been used by sailors to grab onto or to climb up onto the top deck. Of course, the water line would have existed around here, roughly. And then you can see as we walk along more sections where it's been joined and welded together. Although you can see quite clearly the old metal from the new, probably doesn't look that dissimilar to how one of these things would have looked back in the day, especially after a few years of bumping and bashing around in either the English Channel or the North Sea.
Okay, so last time I filmed the Rescue Buoys, you guys all said, we want to see inside it, we want to see inside it. Now, in the previous Rescue Buoy, I couldn't get inside it because it was in such a poor state of disrepair. This one is in better condition, but unfortunately you're going to be disappointed by what it looks like in the interior currently. And I say currently because it won't always look like this. So, here's the interior of the German Rescue Buoy. There's not much left in it, I'll grant you that. But it's a work in progress because the plan is to completely restore this thing to new. Currently, the only thing that's in here, you might be able to see this, which is power. And they use this basically with welding because they have been welding and fabricating this entire interior. Now, a lot of this stuff, you can actually see the seams and joins where the old sections meet the new sections up here at the top. And down here, you can see the particular levels of corrosion on the original buoy. It's hard to really appreciate just how claustrophobic this would have been. You could have had upwards of 6, 8, 10 people, as it was designed for, that could have lived and survived in the confines of this little space. And this is without all the furniture and all the extra stuff that went into it. You would have had a ladder here in the centre. You had your monks going along this side potentially, or the other side. You would have had like a small bench seat here. This is maybe where the radio would have been, and then all around it, shelves. Shelves for food, medicine, supplies, water. You would have had your 3 buckets. Here, the famous 3 buckets. You can't see any of that now. Hopefully that's something that'll recreate. But it's really remarkable what they've managed to do, and looking at the conning tower up here, I think it's really amazing too. I brought my 360-degree camera in here, so I'm going to show you an exclusive look at a conning tower. Yeah, really amazing. I never thought I would get the chance to see what one of these things really would have looked like. It's quite remarkable, basically stepping back in time and seeing this. I'm even more excited when this thing is actually finished and complete. I'm definitely coming back here when this is a finished article.
But yeah, really amazing. It's quite surreal standing here and seeing what looks to be something that's just come out of a time portal from World War II. They've done such a job in creating an authentic looking thing. I'll be honest, when I first heard about this, I thought it was made of wood. I thought the top half was all wood. The fact that all of this has been fabricated from new metal, with new parts, is really remarkable. It's an incredible achievement. The sheer level of detail that the team at the Bunker Museum has been able to bring to the rescue buoy is truly remarkable, especially considering the lack of plans and information from the time. It was while wandering around the buoy that I was also lucky enough to meet Martin, the expert welder and fabricator who had lent so much of his valuable time over the years restoring the buoy to the incredible condition that it's in now. He talked to me for a while about some of the elements still left to do, including fixing some of the damage that had been caused during the original recovery of the buoy from the sand.
Now we have to
Patch
put
that.
it out of the sand
Yeah.
with a big chain. And the chain hooked in that steel.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the video, I thought it looked like, was there parts of the old ladder still in it when it was taken out?
Parts of the old ladder.
Yeah, because I never thought, of course, I suppose everything that was in it, all the wood and stuff, probably still would have been in there.
Yeah,
It's just all rotten, basically.
Yeah. And we have the old stair. We made it. Measuring the old stair.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah, brilliant.
So we can restore or we make a new ladder.
And it'll just basically go
Yeah, over there.
all the way. So it's on this side down.
Yeah,
in the
this
middle.
side down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that your next thing? You're going to have to cut all the wood and do all the carpentry in here?
No, that's not my job.
Is that someone else?
No, that's for another one.
Your metal work only?
Yeah, I only do the studio work. Yeah.
Well, I think you've done a pretty good job, so I think that's fair that somebody else takes over from there. When I first arrived to visit the museum, I was also greeted by Andreas and Hilly, who had helped establish the museum and recover the buoy all those years ago. Walking around and telling me the story of the recovery and their work so far really highlighted just how much dedication it had taken to get to this point, and how much is still left to do.
Stop eating grass.
They hope one day to have the entire interior fleshed out, and better yet, just a few metres away and down under the ground in one of the dozens of former bunkers was one last surprise, where one day an entire exhibit detailing the journey to repair the buoy will be installed, as well as an interactive display that featured a very familiar voice and video.
July 1941, the Battle of Britain began. For pilots on both sides, aerial confrontations.
Terschelling is an incredible island, full of beautiful views, a unique culture and rich history. But what this dedicated group of islanders have managed to do in bringing the history of the island's World War II past to life is commendable, and it's thanks to their hard work that one of the most unique and unusual parts of World War II history has been preserved. Well, I was literally about to head out when I realised I hadn't recorded an outro for this, so please excuse the slightly dishevelled look of somebody who has just gotten to the end of a very long editing project. But thank you very much for watching yet another video on the German Rescue Buoy. This is the second one. I had my original video on the German Rescue Buoy that is, I believe, by quite a wide margin, the most popular video I have ever made so far. And this video is a kind of follow-up to something I said at the very end of that one. At the end of that one, I think I was sitting in my old camper van, and I said it would be really good to get out to visit Terschelling, where the remains of a German rescue buoy was. And I never thought I'd really get a chance to get out there so quickly, but just over a year later, here I am, and we have been out and seen it, and, well, blew my expectations away, to be honest. I never expected the exterior to look the way that it is now, and if they have done even half the accurate recreation on the inside that they have done on the outside, it's going to look absolutely incredible. So think of this as part 2 of 3, because I'd love to go back there again to see it once it's all finished and once they have the exhibit and everything laid out. It's very odd hearing my voice in a museum exhibit. Absolutely loved that bit. Terschelling's an incredible island. That's the thing I can say the most from this. Amazing place. Absolutely loved it. Everyone there is so friendly. Obviously, I live on a small island, so I always enjoy visiting other islands as well too. The guys that showed me around, you've got Martin and Andreas and Hilly, who are so involved with the museum and the restoration of the rescue buoy. Hilly actually has another museum. He has the Wrack Museum, which is the shipwreck museum. My goodness, if you want an amazing place to visit, it is basically an accumulation of all the incredible bits and pieces that have washed up ashore over the years on the variety of islands, but mainly Terschelling. There are the conning towers to submarines, I'm not even joking, guns and diving suits and cameras and wood and toys and everything. It's absolutely amazing. And of course, it's a big part of those islands' history and culture is about the stuff that washes ashore, because of course they're in the middle of an incredibly busy trade route historically, and the rescue buoy is just one small part of that. One thing I'd like to mention is I hiked all the way out to where the rescue buoy was actually found, way in the very east. I keep saying north, but in the very east of the island. And I actually went to visit the Drowning House. The Drowning House is a house on stilts that was intended for shipwreck victims stranded up there in the middle of nowhere. It has an arrow that points to the nearest settlement, West Terschelling, or one of the nearer villages. And in there you would have found all the stuff you needed to kind of keep you alive until you could call for help. And in fact, I found it very poetic because it resembles in many ways the intention of the rescue buoy. It even has a mast with a black ball that you can hoist up to alert people that you're there. And my intention had been go out there and kind of film the parallels between the two of them as a part of the story of the video, but I never got around. It didn't really work out in the edit, but I'm saying it now because I didn't want to waste the 12.5-mile hike with all my camera gear all the way out to this beautiful little drowning house without using that footage at some point in the video. So yeah, thanks again to everyone who helped me in this project. Brendan, who did those models. Brendan did the original models. I then contacted him again, models of the rescue buoy, and I contacted him again to say, could we do the same, but I'm going to send you screenshots of drone videos and stuff that I've taken on Terschelling, and can we match them up, as you might have seen in the video? And it worked really well. That interior shot as it fades from me in the rusty interior of the rescue buoy to the recreated model by Brendan is just amazing. I'll leave the link to his work below. And of course my Patreons who support me in all the stuff that I do. I'll maybe do a little exclusive behind the scenes video with some of the unused footage from Terschelling. There was a lot of footage that I used. Unfortunately, you might have noticed my mic broke, so reminder, I need to get myself a better mic. So there's actually quite a lot of footage that I didn't have a chance to use in the finished product. But I think that is about it. It's been a heck of a year. Another year on YouTube making videos. This year has all been about, I feel like the theme of this year has been following up on stuff from last year in some ways. I was out there visiting the TC-497 in America. Now I'm out visiting the rescue buoy. But this is you watching in 2023. Have a great Christmas and New Year, and I'll see you in 2024. And if you're watching in 2024 or beyond, hope the world's good. Anyway, thank you very much, and bye-bye.